After a wild twist in the second round, the Knicks and the Pacers both shocked the East. And now we've got a very different matchup in the Eastern Conference Finals than we could have ever imagined. So in this video, I'm breaking down everything you're going to need to know about a rivalry rematch, from the key battles to the swing factors, and the one game-changing adjustment that could decide the entire series. To start with, we need to rewind to last year's playoffs, where these two teams met in a dramatic 7-game series. The Pacers ultimately advanced, but that final result does not tell you the full story. The Knicks were decimated by injuries all throughout that series, with nearly half their rotation sidelined by its conclusion, and yet they still nearly beat the Pacers, pushing them to 7 games. And they did all of this without Karl-Anthony Towns, who came in their massive blockbuster trade right before training camp. So really, we can't take too much from that series. Then we need to look at their matchups in the regular season just gone. The Knicks and the Pacers faced off 3 times this season, with New York taking the season series 2-1. None of these games ended up being particularly close, but it is important to add some context here as well. 2 of these matchups happened earlier in the season at a time where Indiana was really struggling out of the gates. The Pacers got off to a pretty slow start this season and weren't playing anywhere near the level they've been able to reach in these playoffs. The 3rd game, however, came in February, and while that one should be telling, it still doesn't paint a full picture. Miles Turner missed the game for the Pacers, and his absence had a huge impact on both ends of the floor. He's the defensive anchor for the team, providing really the only rim protection across their entire roster, and he's also a guy who can space out the floor with his 3-point shooting. A rare combo that's essential for Indiana's success. With Turner sidelined, the Pacers had no answer for Karl-Anthony Towns, who absolutely torched them for 40 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 steals, shooting 14 of 23 in that game. But he was doing most of that against Thomas Bryant, who simply isn't built to defend someone like Towns. That game looked very different than what we're likely going to see in the playoffs, where Turner is available, providing the kind of resistance at the rim that can completely change a game plan. So while the regular season numbers by themselves lean the way of New York, and looking at how the playoff series ended last year, with the Knicks still managing to push it to 7 despite being incredibly injured, all of these results have to be taken with a grain of salt. This series is shaping up to be an entirely different beast than what we have previously seen between these two teams. Another crucial piece of the puzzle has to do with just how different this Pacers team is this season compared to last. After a shaky start to the year, they found their rhythm in a massive way, and a lot of that has to do with their chemistry, especially on the offensive end, as they've reached a new level. But the most impressive leap that the group has taken has to do with their defense. Last year, Indiana's defense was undoubtedly their Achilles heel. They leaned into a heavy pressure style, trying to force turnovers and chaos, but once teams figured out how to stay poised in those moments, they could usually generate great looks at will. However, that is no longer the case. This season, the Pacers knew that they had to get better on the defensive end and really work towards achieving that over the offseason, increasing their level of defensive focus all across the season, and it's made them a far better defensive team this season compared to last. Guys like Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith have really become very good defenders, and even Tyrese Halliburton has been pretty underrated on that end as well, actually leading the league in blocked 3-point jumpers, while also being a really good help defender in the passing lanes. The whole team has fully bought into trying to up their defense, and it has made a night and day difference. A huge reason for the entire team transformation, though, has been the full integration of Pascal Siakam. After arriving in a mid-season deal last year, he's now had a full off-season and regular season to fully get embedded in Rick Carlisle's system, and it shows. Siakam has been the ultimate Swiss Army knife for the team. He can lead the team in scoring any night, take on the toughest defensive assignment, or slide into any role that the moment demands. He's given the Pacers both versatility and reliability, and it's clear that he now fits into the system like a glove. He's helped Indiana gain a strong sense of identity, as his previous champion championship experience with the Raptors has really helped to fully round out this team. They now know exactly who they are on both sides of the floor. Defensively, they can now trust to get multiple stops in a row when they need to, and offensively, their fast-paced drive and kick style continues to generate clean looks like clockwork. The Knicks cannot underestimate the Pacers on the defensive end, because yes, their Game 6 demolition of Boston was another statement win, but I have been saying this about Indiana ever since they went up 2-0 on Cleveland. I think they've been the best team in the Eastern Conference so far this playoffs, and nothing since then has been able to change my mind. Indiana are playing with a real sense of purpose right now, riding the wave of some of the best two-way basketball they've played in years. And at the center of it all is still Tyrese Haliburton. He stepped up and truly led the team in the playoffs, dictating tempo and making life completely miserable for opposing defenses. Haliburton's ability to punish even the smallest defensive mistakes make him so annoying to play against. If you're even slightly late on a rotation, mess up a switch, or even just play him straight up without a total focus, he has the ability to make you pay every time. There might not be a better cross-court passer in the league right now, as he can hit his teammates from basically anywhere as long as they're open, making help defense really difficult to get away with against the Pacers. And what makes his playmaking more lethal is how his assist-to-turnover ratio is one of the best we've seen in recent years, as he is calm and confident with the ball in hand. But if there's one area where Haliburton still needs to take a step forward, and this series could demand it, it's as a scorer. Too often, we'll see him finish a game with just 7 shot attempts for 10 points, which simply isn't good enough for a player of his caliber. Against the New York Knicks defense that features 3 elite wing defenders such as OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Josh Hart, it's likely that Indiana's usual offensive flow could be disrupted, just like they were able to do to the Celtics. There are going to be moments in this series where Haliburton has to step up as a scorer. We've already seen what he can do. Just think back to Game 5 against the Cavaliers, where he erupted for 31 points on 66% shooting, while still being able to contribute as a playmaker. That version of Tyrese Haliburton has to show up again for multiple games in this series, because while he's averaging 17 points per game in the playoffs, he's also shooting a miserable 33% from deep, and those numbers simply need to improve if Indiana wants to beat a Knicks team and make it to the finals. This series is going to be a battle, one defined by 2 teams that have grown, evolved, and made big-time changes over the offseason. And speaking of New York, let's dive into their side of the picture, because what the Knicks have done so far in these playoffs has been nothing short of incredible. As surprising as Indiana's win was over a young Cleveland Cavaliers team, you could at least wrap your head around it. Cleveland, while talented, are still very young, and in many ways, the Pacers actually had more playoff experience than the Cavs. But for the Knicks to walk into Boston and steal the first 2 games of that series in that ruckus building against the reigning champs, no less, and do it by coming back from multiple 20-point deficits was absolutely remarkable. Outside of a couple of head-scratching performances in games 3 and 5, where it felt like the Knicks took the foot off the gas and lost their edge, the Knicks looked like a legitimate defensive powerhouse. Game 4 in particular was arguably their finest showing, really, of the whole Jalen Brunson era. Everything clicked. Brunson was masterful, putting up 39 points, 5 rebounds, 12 assists, while doing it all on 56% shooting. But it was not just him. Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, and Karl Anthony Towns all combined for 66 points, while each of them was shooting over 50% from the floor. Mikal Bridges in particular was incredible to start the 4th quarter, morphing into a budget version of Kevin Durant with a flurry of mid-range jumpers to stabilize the team, while Brunson caught a breather on the bench. That kind of secondary scoring in a moment where their season was hanging in the balance was nothing short of incredible. What makes the Knicks so dangerous is when they are locked in, because some games they come out just with the wrong energy, but when everything is working, their two-way identity is as complete as anyone in the league. They can defend multiple positions with elite length and versatility, and when the ball is popping and moving offensively, they've got enough scoring options to at least put up enough points to win a game. Heading into the series, they do have some genuine advantages, one in particular that could tilt the margins in a massive way. One of Indiana's lingering weaknesses, which does not get talked about enough, is their rebounding. They are simply not strong on the boards. That vulnerability often gets masked because of how good they are at getting out in transition, using their speed to punish teams off misses before anyone even realizes what's happened. But it's still there, and for a team like the Knicks, who have guys who can crash the offensive glass to generate second chance looks, which they did very well in the Celtics series, this is a real opportunity. The tricky part is whether or not the Knicks actually choose to lean into it, because sending extra bodies to the boards could be a huge gamble, because if you don't secure that rebound, you're risking giving up the transition. And against the Pacers, those come fast and often. That's why most teams opt to play it safe and just try and get everybody back. But it is still an area worth watching, because if the Knicks can manage that risk, potentially utilizing that double big lineup with Robinson and Cat, having one of the bigs crash the glass and the other get back, it could definitely be a massive swing factor in the series if they are constantly able to generate a ton of second chance looks. However, defending the Pacers is of course no easy task. Their offensive system is built on constant motion, drive and kicks, sharp backdoor cuts, and lightning quick decision making from one of the best passers in basketball. They are relentless, and they know how to exploit even the smallest defensive breakdown. But if any team is equipped to handle the challenge, it is probably New York, with OG, Bridges, and Hart all patrolling the perimeter, and Brunson and Cat clicking offensively. The real test for New York is going to be their discipline, because if the Knicks continue to have defensive breakdowns, the Pacers aren't going to let you off the hook like the Celtics did when they were still taking the threes anyway. The Pacers will go to the rack and score every time. But really, this series all begins with the matchups. That is where the series can truly take shape, and for the Knicks, there are some very deliberate choices that could swing the series and the momentum from the opening tip of Game 1. Here is how I think things will line up for the Knicks. Mikal Bridges on Tyrese Haliburton, OG Anunoby on Pascal Siakam, Cat on Turner, Brunson trying to hide on Nesmith, and Josh Hart on Andrew Nembhard. Out of all of those assignments, the most important one, the one that could set the tone for the whole series, is Bridges on Haliburton. Now, in the Celtics series, we saw OG take the primary defensive responsibility on JT, and that did make sense. Tatum is big, strong, physical, and knows how to use his size to create space. You simply needed someone who could match him pound for pound. But Haliburton is a completely different player. He's not going to try and overpower you. His game is finesse, vision, speed, and misdirection. And that is why I believe Mikal Bridges will get the responsibility in this series. He's quicker than Anunoby on the perimeter, and he's got great length and thrives in the passing lanes. If Bridges can force Haliburton even to just take an extra dribble, hesitate a second longer, or slightly shift his balance before making a pass, that could potentially buy the rest of the Knicks defense just enough time to rotate or contest. And in a series this tightly matched, those little disruptions can become game-changing swings. As for OG, I like him on Siakam for the same reasons he defended Tatum. Pascal is strong, confident in the post, and has been red hot this postseason, shooting 55% from the floor and a remarkable 44% from deep. He's no longer a guy you can just sag off of. If you give him space, he's been punishing teams this postseason. And while Josh Hart could do a fine job, I just like OG Anunoby better in this matchup. He knows Siakam's game from their time as teammates in Toronto, and he's got more size and smarts to make him uncomfortable, especially by contesting those tricky fallaways and spins that Siakam loves to lean on. Then the Brunson-Nesmith matchup is another sneaky one to watch. This isn't just a case of Brunson being able to rest on the quote-unquote weak link, because Nesmith is a legit weapon. He's not only one of the best three-point shooters on their roster, but he's also been surprisingly effective off the dribble in the mid-range, getting to his spots and knocking them down. He's bigger, quicker, and stronger than Brunson, which could be a real problem if Indiana give him the ball and choose to let him go to work against the mismatch. And if that happens and he has success, it's going to make it really difficult to where they put Jalen Brunson on defense. Nembhard would be the next option, but he's even better offensively, as he's really strong, aggressive, and has great handles, and he can get to the cup and finish, as he somewhat plays with the same sort of sneaky physicality that Brunson thrives on down low, and if he could get some quick fouls onto JB, things could start to unravel for the Knicks. So switching him there won't make things any easier, and you can't even think about putting him on anybody else, because between Halliburton, Pascal Siakam, or Miles Turner, that would just be a disaster. The Knicks are going to have to live with certain mismatches and hope that Brunson can hold up the best he can, and certainly not get himself into foul trouble. Flipping it around to Indiana's side, I'd expect something like Nembhard on Brunson, Turner on Cat, Siakam on OG, Nesmith on Bridges, and Halliburton on Hart. The defensive assignment on Brunson is absolutely the biggest key for the Pacers. It might start with Nembhard, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Nesmith take turns as well. Nesmith has the size and mobility to give Brunson a different look, but the reason I lean toward Andrew Nembhard is because he has the lateral quickness to better react to Brunson's hesitation-heavy style. Jalen loves to lull defenders to sleep and then burst past them into space, and Nembhard may have the best chance of staying with him. Siakam on OG feels like a natural fit. They're both strong, versatile forwards, and there's really no better option for someone else to guard. But just like the Knicks have an issue trying to hide Brunson on defense, Indiana has their own issue trying to cover up Tyrese. In this setup, I have him on Josh Hart because there really isn't anybody else that he could realistically guard. He's not quick enough or physical enough to handle Brunson or Bridges, and OG is far too strong. But Hart poses a unique challenge. Sure, he's not a great shooter, but he will attack Tyrese Halliburton off the bounce. And if I'm Josh Hart, I'm going straight into Halliburton's chest every single time I get the ball. Because if you can put some early fouls onto him, that completely changes the way Indiana has to run their offense. They really do rely heavily on Tyrese to create and orchestrate, and taking him out of the game means more TJ McConnell, who simply hasn't looked as good this playoffs compared to last season. So yes, Hart might be the only viable option for Halliburton to guard, but that does not mean it's a safe option. In the bench minutes, I'd expect Tyrese to see some time with Miles McBride, someone who's way less of an offensive threat, and really, he just needs to contest his threes and stay close. But when it's starters versus starters, Indiana's defense is going to have its hands full, because the Knicks have genuinely got 5 guys on the floor who can all put the ball on the deck, make the right pass, and score in multiple levels. That makes hiding any weak link, especially as someone as valuable as Halliburton, really hard to do. And that, more than anything, could make life really tough for the Pacers if Halliburton isn't able to hold up. But it's not just Indiana who has questions to answer on the defensive end. How New York plans to contain the Pacers in transition is going to be just as important. The Knicks may have 3 excellent wing defenders, but they also have 2 defensive liabilities with Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. Too often, these guys fail to communicate on switches, get attacked in mismatches, or simply don't get back quickly enough in transition. And that is going to be a massive problem in this Pacers series, against a team that thrives off of pushing the pace and will punish you every single time down if you don't get back. This isn't Boston. The Pacers aren't launching threes hoping to outshoot you. They're attacking the paint relentlessly, getting high percentage looks, drawing contact, and then forcing you to help, where only then they will take some threes. Even on a cold shooting night, they can still get to the rack, putting up enough points to win a game. That's why New York is going to need to stay locked in for a full 48 minutes. They cannot have a game 3 or 5 performance in this series, because the Pacers are just a really difficult team to play. 1 lapse, 1 poor switch, 1 missed rotation, and that's a bucket. You have to do all of the little things right every possession, or this series could get out of hand very quickly. Honestly, while games 1 and 2 against Boston were very impressive, I think the Celtics' inability to hit shots was a bigger factor than anything New York did defensively. And against the Pacers, you're not going to be able to get away with that. They will just score on you if you're not locked in. Now, the really big issue for the Knicks defensively is the Halliburton-Turner pick and pop. That is going to be a staple for Indiana all series long, and might be the single biggest swing factor. The Knicks have struggled all postseason and regular season when it comes to defending the pick and roll, and when Karl Anthony Towns is the big defending the action, it's a real problem. We saw this over and over and over again in the Milwaukee series. Tyrese uses that yo-yo dribble, gets Brook Lopez leaning a certain direction, and then just blows right by for a layup, or before draws the help defender for a kickout. It was deadly. Against the Bucks, he picked on Brook Lopez in space. Then even against Cleveland, he torched Jared Allen as well, who's known as one of the best big perimeter defenders in the league, making this especially shocking. Now, Towns isn't a Lopez or an Allen. He's slower than Allen, fouls more than both guys, isn't close to a rim protector of either of those guys either, and struggles with split-second decisions defensively. The Pacers are absolutely going to hunt him in the pick and roll or pop, and if he gets into foul trouble, that's a double blow. Not only is he being exploited defensively, but his offense is essential for the Knicks. Having to sit him early puts the Knicks into a tough spot on both ends. Coach Thibodeau did try some counter punches against Boston, leaning into more switching schemes, and it was in that coverage that I thought Cat actually did hold his own pretty good in space, and I think that is going to have to be the move again. Yes, switching might mean Towns ends up on an island against Halliburton, and yes, that's a scary thought, but it's much better than the alternative, trying to hedge, recover, or play in a drop coverage, and all of those options gives Tyrese too much room to cook you. And while Halliburton is a brilliant playmaker, he's not the most dynamic one-on-one scorer. So if you're going to concede something, let him try and beat Cat in isolation, keeping everybody else more quiet. It's absolutely crucial that Towns stays out of foul trouble and Tibbs continues to trust him in a heavy switching coverage, because if not, the Pacers could run New York off the floor in multiple games. So yes, both teams have some serious questions to answer, but if you're asking me to make a final call, I'm leaning towards the Indiana Pacers. I trust their star power more. I think their offensive system is going to give the Knicks fits at times, and if their previous series are telling us anything, where I actually picked the Bucks and Cavs to beat them, I shouldn't be counting out this team. The Knicks have been amazing, but the Indiana Pacers have been playing the best basketball out of anybody during these playoffs, and I just think they're the better overall team. It's going to be a war, and I don't feel amazing about the pick, but I'm taking Indiana in 7 games. But before we get there is another huge game about to go down. Game 7 between the Denver Nuggets and the Oklahoma City Thunder. And if you want to hear everything you'll need to know ahead of that showdown, you can check out the full breakdown right now.